Robert Plank Show, episode 299. Organize a virtual summit for instant traffic, credibility, subscribers, and sales with Tom Morkes.
Cool.
Hi everyone and welcome to the show. Our guest today is Tom Morkes, and just to make sure that everyone knows his website, his last name is spelled Morkes, so his website is tommorkes.com. And Tom is a West Point graduate, an Iraq war veteran, and he's the founder and CEO of Insurgent Publishing, which is a creative advisory and consulting firm that specializes in strategic, large-scale book and digital product launches. So Mr. Tom, welcome to the show today.
Robert, thanks for having me.
I'm super glad that I have you. And so since you're here, can you kind of tell us what it is that you and your company does and what makes you guys stand out?
Sure. So we predominantly do large-scale kind of marketing campaigns, usually around like education-based type campaigns. So we'll do things like we'll run and manage summits, virtual summits, course launches, book launches, those kind of things. And then we offer a few services like affiliate marketing, paid advertising marketing, copywriting, those kind of things.
Awesome. And so when we're talking about like large scale, like virtual summits and books and stuff like that, I mean, how large scale are we talking? So if someone is listening, how do they know if they're a right fit for what you have?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I upwards of some of the campaigns we've done have generated close to about $1 million. And this is usually in a pretty short time span. So your typical event will last, 3 or 4 weeks if you include like if there's an event like open cart period, if it's a course or if it's a summit, when the actual summit's going live, those kind of things. So as far as like who's the right fit, we work with brands. I think it's one of the best ways to describe it, like personal brands or business brands that leverage education to sell their products or services.
So leverage education, what does that mean exactly?
So it'll be things like anybody who teaches to sell, basically. So there's a lot of people who can do this, and if you're not doing it, you probably should consider it if you can. So, anything that would be like, if you're in the health or fitness space, so maybe it's a personal brand where the person has a course and they teach people how to get healthier, right? So the idea being, well, we could do a campaign around maybe some sort of like educational campaign, right? So or some kind of educational event around how to get healthier. And then that would segue or lead into our kind of sales event where we then generate the sales. So we use the education as essentially kind of a lead generator, and then we sell the product or service on the back end.
Awesome. And so if someone is coming to you and for example, let's say they're in like the health and fitness space, what should someone have when they come to you? Like, do your clients usually have like a book finished or just an idea, or like kind of what's the starting point with your ideal client?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely depends, but I'd say typically clients will actually have the product already. We've worked with a couple where they were still in the development, and so we can help from an advisory standpoint on the development of the product itself, or the offer itself rather, is typically where we come in. So like, how do we package the offer, whether it's a product or service? So sometimes we do kind of start from scratch with the client there, but otherwise we're working with somebody who has something that's either ready to go or almost ready to go, like in the context of like a book launch, which we've done a number. Obviously the book isn't ready typically when we start working with the person. Usually we have maybe like a rough draft or something like that because we want to gear it up for the launch, and that's usually, it takes about 4 to 6 months. But then in other capacities, if we're doing a virtual summit or a course launch or something like that, again, it just depends. Either the idea is like, sometimes people have the idea pretty fully formed and we just come in to kind of like optimize it, or we're working with somebody kind of who just needs help starting more from scratch in that regard. I'd say the prerequisite for us, for it to be like actually lucrative for them and us, it doesn't make sense for us to work with somebody, for example, who doesn't have a product or service or hasn't found the product market fit, if that makes sense. So really we work with people who have some sort of audience already. They've sold some sort of product or service before, typically speaking, because those are the people we can kind of best come in, optimize what they're doing, and then run one of these campaigns around it to generate sales for whatever that product or service is.
Awesome. Makes a lot of sense. So ideally they would already have an audience, they've already sold something, and also ideally they either have a book finished or mostly finished, and then there's only a few weeks left on that. And so so far you've thrown out a few different kind of terms like a virtual summit or like a course or some affiliate marketing. And so when you have a client that comes to you, do they usually know what they want? Like, do they know they want to have a course plus a book, or is this the kind of thing where you kind of like give them ideas and see what they latch onto, or what's kind of the thought process there?
Yeah, so most of the time actually I'd say like 99% of the time it's just referral based. So when we do something like this, usually if it's done well, then people will ask the person who just, launched the book or who just ran the virtual summit, hey, who'd you work with? Who did this with you? And that's how we get our referrals and our leads and stuff like that. So I don't do any kind of like outbound marketing or anything like that to generate new clients. We just rely on word of mouth. So when people come to me, usually it's for a specific thing. They're like, hey, saw that you did so-and-so's book launch, and I'm working on a book right now. How do we work together? Or I just participated in your summit. Great work. Like, I'd love to find out more about how you do what you do, and I'm interested. And that's typically how the conversation will start. And then from there, sometimes that's exactly what they need. The person inquiring maybe about doing a summit, maybe that's exactly what they would need to do, and that's kind of where their business is at, and that makes a lot of sense. And then other times after the conversation, it may make sense to not do that, at least not right now. So yeah, there's no real rhyme or reason to how when people inquire about like, which direction we're going to go. It really just depends on once we have a conversation and figure out what their business goals are, where we take it from there.
Awesome. Fair enough. And so with all these sort of possibilities out there, I mean, is there any like one thing that either kind of gets you the most excited, or is there one of these areas like virtual summits or courses or whatever, like where it's something that like more people should do, or like are any of these sort of your area of focus these days?
No, it's pretty even across the board. We get a lot of demand for running, like essentially kind of creating, organizing, and running virtual summits right now, and those are great for anybody who's trying to do any kind of list building exercise, like or trying to grow their email list, grow their platform online. Anytime we talk with people who have courses that they want to take to the next level, typically what we're doing is we're structuring in such a way to obviously get as many sales as possible, but then we'll bring in and we'll kind of layer over certain types of marketing. So like affiliate marketing is a great example. So that kind of helps somebody get to the next level there. So they might be able to do maybe like $100,000 on their own or something like that, but with partners they might be able to do $300,000 to $500,000. And it just really just depends. And the books, yeah, same. So we're actually kind of even between those three. And then there's like, I guess you could different, like even amongst those three kind of categories, there's different campaigns and different things that we run. Like we've done challenges where we'll do some kind of like, free challenge in some sort of space, and then, lead it into some kind of sale, like, maybe a membership site or something like that. So it's all sorts of things. So the bottom line is I don't think there's anything that's really working, exceptionally well. That's the only thing we're doing or anything like that. We do really wherever the demand is or whatever the need is for something, we can usually come in and say, yeah, this might be the best solution for you at this time.
Awesome. Makes perfect sense. So virtual summits, affiliate marketing, and book launches. And I like how this is a sort of like not the usual, like here, buy my stuff. Like you said in the beginning, like there's some amount of sort of educating people so that they're aware of whatever this need, or maybe they do a free challenge or something like that. And so this whole thing of like virtual summits, it's sort of weird because it seems to me like it was huge and it went away and now it's like back again, and I keep like sort of seeing it. And so the way that I've sort of seen it done from the outside is like I go to some kind of a web page and there's some kind of like multi-day event, and there's like, I don't know, like 10 or 12 speakers. So like there might be like 10 or 12 different like health coaches presenting on different sort of aspects of it, and then each of these speakers, I guess I see them like kind of promote the page and maybe have like a contest to see who can get the most people signed up. But that's sort of the extent of what I've seen as far as virtual summits. So can you kind of get us all sort of caught up and on the same page about like what a virtual summit is for you and what kind of things you set up for that?
Yeah, so you definitely described like I think some traditional aspects of like the way people are running things now. But a summit itself, I don't know if there's like a dictionary definition of this or not, but at least the way I think of it, it's some sort of like, virtual online event where you usually bring together subject matter experts, usually on some sort of niche or topic. And typically you you're bringing together, maybe a group of between, 10, 20, 30 or something like that speakers. And the idea is typically you'll roll that out for free. And the reason that's great is if it's free education. Somebody might be really interested, say, you mentioned, I think, health. So in this like health topic, they might be very fascinated by like, oh, how do I get healthier? How do I get in better shape? Okay, there's going to be this free, this fitness virtual summit where I can come and learn this for free. So you're going to get, typically it's a great lead gen strategy because it's free and it's great education, or it should be, right, with the experts you bring on board. So then because it's free, it makes it very easy to share. So from a partner and affiliate standpoint, that's where these things work really well. We're talking summits or virtual summits. Usually everybody who's speaking is some sort of like affiliate or something like that. So they're incentivized to share that with their audience. So it's beneficial on multiple levels. The person who's running it doesn't have to do a ton of work to create it. He or she just has to interview the people, find the experts, bring them on, interview them, and then kind of like package the whole thing. So that's nice. Like the content creation piece is you don't really have to deal with like you would if you're like creating a course or writing a book or something like that. On the other end of that, being somebody who's interviewed, it's nice because especially if you're an up-and-comer, it's nice to get your name out there and have somebody kind of recognize you for that and invite you onto one of these things. So it's great. It's a great win for you, great win for the creator. And then for you as the interviewee or the guest lecturer or something like that, again, you're incentivized potentially as an affiliate partner to share and promote this. And again, if you're being highlighted and people are seeing how wonderful and great you are, it makes sense for you to share it. And it's free. So I really like it. I think, I don't know why they went away or how they were run before they went away, honestly, because I've only been doing the summit stuff maybe in the past like year and a half now. So I'm not savvy to like the history of them or the online space of how that's changed in that regard. I just know now they can be a really solid strategy for building a list, whether you're established or not.
Awesome. And so, I mean, how does this sort of thing come together? Because you mentioned that, so it's like a series of interviews. You have 10 or 20 or 30 guests. And so, like, how does that kind of come together? Like, when you have that initial call with a client, do you brainstorm together like possible people to contact, or how do you sort of start? I mean, what's like the starting point from you say someone says I want to have a virtual summit? How do you decide on like number of guests, who to contact, topics, stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, totally depends. Like sometimes people come and say, I'm gonna interview 12 people, or I've already interviewed. Like these are the 15 people I've interviewed. Okay, fine. That's great. If we're working more from scratch, which I like better, typically anyway, it's just more fun that way. Then yeah, I think I start with saying, well, what's the topic, right? What's the niche? Who are the people that are gonna be watching these interviews? Who are the people that are gonna need the information that's contained in here, and what are their problems? And typically you can come up with like a slew of those. So if it's health, maybe it's losing weight, building muscle, right? All these traditional ones. And then we can break that down and say, okay, well, are there certain aspects of that we can get more detailed and more refined? And then we'd say, okay, well, what about, something specific for muscle building for men versus women? And then what about weight loss for men versus women? So then, that can be a way to like start to get specific about the guests you want to bring on. Or sometimes if you're, depending on where you're starting, if you're really starting from scratch and still in the brainstorming phase, you might find actually just one of these topics like weight loss for women that's going to be the topic of the whole summit. So because I can break that into maybe a dozen different things and have a dozen different experts just on that specific niche, right? And that's right. What you're seeing in the space right now is people getting more and more, I think, specialized in the topics that they put out there for these virtual summits, which I think makes them a lot more effective. The idea of just having like this general summit on whatever is much less effective than here's the specific niche, here's the topic, this is who it's for, and then curating basically the guests to bring on. So yeah, it definitely starts with brainstorming session, starts with market research and kind of understanding the customer. So again, depending on where the client's at, that can either be really, really easy because they already totally understand their market, or sometimes it takes a little more time and you just got to really develop the idea over time.
Awesome. And so, it sounds like there's sort of two mindsets there. There's like the way of like being broad in a niche, like, in health and fitness, talk about, exercise and diet and like all these other things. And then, like you said, well, muscle building for women, you can get super drilled down. And so that way it's like someone can sign up for that virtual summit as a customer, as a subscriber, and they don't have to automatically, ignore 2/3. They don't have to be all switching gears. They can just really drill down. And so when you're getting super specific in a subject with all these summit guests, have you come across any kind of like conflicting information? Like if one person has an opinion and then, presenter number three has like the complete opposite. Have you seen any sort of difficulties like that?
I mean, I wouldn't call them difficulties per se, but yeah, I mean, I've attended, summits and stuff like that. I feel like that happens like all the time. Hopefully not a lot of the ones I'm helping, facilitate, because I like to be very specific about, what are the topics that this person's going to be covering? Like what's their how to, or what's their, thinking through like what would be the angle, the topic, what does it address, et cetera, so that you can hopefully like, I guess weed out any potential like major conflict. Like if your thing is about, marketing and sales, and your whole thing is like how social media is terrible for that, you probably don't want to bring on a speaker to talk about like social media marketing, right? So like those kind of egregious things, I'm sure they happen here and there. I've definitely seen summits where people have different opinions, but the reason I say it's not a problem is because typically the way summits are presented is you're saying, hey, here's a bunch of experts, do what you will with the information. Like they're going to present different points of view, different ways to go about things. It's not that one is right or wrong per se, but just kind of what makes the most sense for you. So when you position it that way, I think the listener is probably a lot more forgiving, and it's a lot less of an issue.
Awesome. So they can just kind of pick and choose what's right for them. And so when you're contacting these guests, is there any sort of difficulty with like getting those first handful of people to sign up, or like is it like a numbers game? Like, do you know if you send out X number of cold emails, you'll get X number of replies, anything like that?
I think a lot of times I don't do the numbers game so much as maybe other people do. Like I definitely look at it from a content standpoint first. So I say if this is the topic and this is the subject matter, who can speak to this, and who are the more famous names in the space that could speak to this, and then who are maybe less famous but just really high quality type teachers in the space that could speak on it. So then we might create a list and say, okay, in this breakdown we're going to have, we're going to look to get, one or two or three like really headline names, big name people, like, we're going to have Oprah on this summit. And then everybody else, we could say, okay, it's much less relevant of how famous they are, right? Because as long as we have one or two headliners, a big name, that kind of gets us that more mass marketable appeal. Then the rest we can just bring on really high quality people that maybe most people haven't heard of. And the nice part is they are usually the people that bring the most value, which is, I guess, not surprising. But you need a mix of that. You do want to have like ideally some headliner, at least in your niche or industry, like that's the name people recognize in this space, for example. That's a powerful thing to have a person like that on. So if you can get that, that's awesome. Then everything else, they just look at, okay, how do we make sure we have literally just the best speaker to deliver this training or this education. So really focusing on the content first. And then from there, the actual outreach, recruiting guests, speakers, and stuff like that, pretty simple process. Because again, people usually like to be highlighted. They like to be, asked to be interviewed. They like to be featured on things like that. Again, we're not talking like the super all-star celebrities that are too busy to respond to their own emails, right? But we're talking, maybe the average, the middle tier hustler who's building an online platform, something that might have some audience already, probably has something carved out in their space. There's so many of those kind of people that you just have never heard of, but that are doing amazing things. And I find the process of recruiting them, and I don't know, not that difficult. But again, just leading with the content first, you can almost always find somebody to speak on something, which is the case. And I mean that, and still keeping a quality to the actual teaching that you're doing.
Awesome. That's a really good mindset. So you don't have to have like 100% all stars. We can just have one or two recognized names, and the other people are kind of that middle tier, or like the up and comers who have a lot of good stuff but just aren't that well recognized yet. So awesome. And so with this kind of thing, I'm always curious about kind of the timeline. So I mean, what is that timeline like? Like when you say we're going to have a virtual summit, does it have to be at least like 2 or 3 months away, or like what's the deadline on getting guests and getting the sales letter and all that kind of stuff? Like what's the timeline sort of like there?
Yeah, I would say to be safe, you probably want to give yourself 4 to 6 months to plan and prep. You could probably do it in less time. If you've done it before, you could probably do it in less time if you have a lot of the assets and you know what it takes. But like anything else, if it's your first time doing it, you're going to stumble. So if you're going to stumble, you probably want a little bit of extra time to make up for that. So I usually, a typical engagement when I work with a client will be about 4 to 6 months out to kind of kick off the webinar.
Okay.
Or sorry, kick off like the summit.
So let's say like you were talking with the client and they said, I have this idea for a summit. I have some guests, but that's pretty much it. And you say, all right, well, just to be safe, we'll plan on having the launch date be 6 months from today. And so what happens, in those in between months? Like, is there a certain like, a month or two of like getting guests and of making the sales letter and of like recording the things, or like what is that those 6 months sort of look like?
Yeah, I usually break things down into like essentially I think like five or six phases. So we'll start with like just the strategy where we're doing essentially strategy and planning. That'll typically take about a month. People always overestimate that, but it's actually takes a lot to think through because there's so many aspects of any one of these things we're talking about, whether it's a summit or anything else. And there's so many details that people typically gloss over. It's just, and it will hurt you down the road. So when I work with somebody, we do strategy and planning, and that takes a month. And usually that's a minimum of like 2 calls, like 1 to 2 hour calls with the client to really dig into every aspect of everything. And then we can usually build out kind of the roadmap. Then we get into research and recruitment. And that's where we're doing that research into that marketplace, right? That niche or industry to figure out who's out there, who are the celebrities, who are the industry leaders, what's being talked about, what are the interesting topics, et cetera, et cetera. So we could start putting together a list of potential, in this case, we're talking summit, so potential speakers, potential affiliate partners, potential, audiences that would be interested in the topics that we're going to bring to the table. And that process, research and recruitment, the research piece might take, I'd say 14 to 30 days. And then the recruitment piece usually takes about 2 months. And then we get into what I call kind of the pre-open cart phase where we're, I guess right before that, I'll do something kind of like a trust building phase where I encourage like the client to actually make sure they're producing content and getting some conversation started before we actually get into the event itself. But then we get into, the pre-summit, pre-promotion when people start, our affiliate partners, our speakers will start promoting. That's usually a 2-week period. Then the summit itself might be 1 to 2 weeks. And then if we do any kind of upsell, downsell period afterwards, another week or so. So all in, you look at that and you're like, yeah, that's, probably minimum 4-month time frame.
Awesome. I mean, it all makes logical sense. And what I really like about the way that you laid that out is that you left tons of padding, tons of wiggle room, just in case there's like some sort of delay or something unexpected. And so something you mentioned in there is so there's the strategy and planning, there's the research and recruitment, there's the trust building, there's the pre-promotion, and then there's the summit. And in there you mentioned things about upsells. And so are there upsells and things like that in this free virtual summit?
A lot of people do it, and so we've done it maybe half a dozen times, I think. So we'll do like the summit will be on health, right? And then what you'll sell at the end of it, you'll sell a course on kettlebell training or something like that, or this sort of like fitness program, or maybe this membership, sell access to a membership site that like keeps people accountable and healthy and whatnot, right? So the idea being that maybe there's an offer beyond the summit itself, beyond that event, that you can sell that's value add to anybody who comes to the summit. So this is why planning is so important, because there's got to be congruency across the board of everything you do. There's got to be a purpose behind it, purpose behind the content, purpose behind the speaker who's delivering the content, purpose behind the offer that's tagged on to the end of that content after it's delivered, right? So there's a lot that goes into this. So, it doesn't make sense to run a summit on topic X and sell some kind of random thing that doesn't have anything to do with what you just taught, right? Or what the summit interviewees or guests were teaching. So yes, there are upsells, downsells, lots of different offers. The typical baseline one, if somebody's interested, is like just selling the summit as is. Like you get a lifetime access to all these interviews, and maybe you get the show notes or something like that, or the typed up notes, or you get audio versions of it, whatever, right? There's a whole bunch of different ways you can cut that and offer it. And the nice part there is that somebody is listening to this is like, well, I'm actually really fascinated by that, but I don't have a product or service to sell at the end. That's okay. That's kind of the cool part of a summit, is it becomes the product itself as well. because, and I don't know if this is clear to your listeners or not. I don't know if we mentioned it, but again, it's typically released free. People can come to this thing for free. And then after a certain number of hours or a certain number of days, those interviews get locked up and they're behind a paywall after that. So the idea is that it's really good lead generation strategy for that reason because it's free, but then it's also a bit of a sales strategy in that regard because you'll get a lot of people who will go ahead and just purchase access to the entire thing because they're like, I don't want to be on a time limit here of having to consume the stuff in a certain amount of time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, and that's super awesome, especially in the in the context of a membership site. You can have that launch, and have all your members come in and get their accounts, and then the cart's closed. There's no way for anyone new to sign up, and then anyone who has those existing free accounts only has maybe 7 days or 30 days or however long to watch those recordings, and then after that, now they have to pay to get access to that again. And so that's super awesome. And it kind of, we're starting to run out of time, but I'm sort of curious about how the virtual summit works after that big launch. Do you build in some sort of like evergreen component so that way it keeps on getting traffic and opt-ins and sales even after the event's over with?
Yeah, so some people I know are doing that, which is cool, creating some sort of like evergreen offer from it. I haven't seen it work too well. Like the nature of, and when you think about it, this is why it kind of makes sense. The nature of a summit is it's live to some degree. It's like exciting because it's, happening now. So it's cutting edge material. So in a lot of ways, the idea of like getting access to the summit later, like months later or years later, may not be quite as compelling in a lot of spaces because the idea is that it is cutting edge. And then there's the fact that I think a lot of people purchase because of the excitement of that event happening. So when that traffic comes, they see that it's going live and they have to purchase to get access. So the point is it's just not quite as great an offer. Like if I'm going to be putting something into an evergreen funnel, for example, I probably wouldn't do a summit. It's not saying that you couldn't. You probably could. And I know there's somebody out there who's proving me wrong right now. So I don't say that as a hard and fast rule. There's definitely times where you could do it. And again, if that's your only product or the only thing you've got going, or one of a few, then it may not hurt to try to create something evergreen where you have that available. People can I don't know, sign up to watch one or two of the videos and then they have to purchase access to the rest. So that kind of thing I've seen people do. I don't know how well it actually converts though, because I haven't done it with any of the summits that we've done. We typically use them as like one-off events and then go from there.
Okay, fair enough. So the summit is, for at least for the way that you do it, is a way of getting that traffic, getting that list built, and then the evergreen offer is that the upsell or the course or a membership site or whatever that is.
That's exactly it.
Awesome. And so, when you've been seeing what other people do with summits, and you've been helping your clients do these virtual summits, have you seen like a number one universal mistake happening with these?
Yeah, I'm trying to correct it right now, and it's just the fact that people run this kind of event and then try to sell something on the back end, right? Some kind of course or something like that, which we just discussed, right? Which is I think that people are doing, but I think the problem is it missed the mark like 90% of the time. So I'm experimenting on a couple that we're running here in the next month or two. We're going to be kind of inverting the sales process for the summit. A lot of people put the sales pitch and the promotion at the back end of it. By the time the end hits, most people are burned out, honestly, with content. So we're kind of inverting that. We're going to be doing the kind of the sales pitch at the beginning. So I'll be able to give you some updates on that in probably like a month or two if it works. But that's the thing. So I guess I'm not saying that it's the thing that people are doing wrong is leaving the sales pitch to the end, but the ultimate thing that people are doing wrong is they're I think with the summits, the way they're being run is they do kind of burn out the guest a little bit, or the viewer, the person who signed up to attend the summit, because there's just so much content. And then when they do have a bigger offer, something more expensive that they want to offer, but then people are maybe moved on, by the end of a week or 2 weeks of this kind of stuff. And then the second big error I see is, a summit is content, right? It's content, it's free content. So then all of a sudden I see people trying to sell, courses or something like that on the back of a summit, when a course or something like that, an online course, anything educational is more content. So it's like giving away a ton of free content and then selling for, content. It's tough. It's a really tough sell. And so I think the mistake is just that people think that, well, there will be these like I can drive a lot of traffic to something like this, give away a lot of free content, then sell content, which typically isn't the case. Summits that work best are selling something outside of content, some kind of service or software or experience or something like that, not just here's more content. So I think that's another thing to be aware of if you're looking to go that route.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense to me, especially as a buyer, because sometimes I'll just there'll be so much free content or something that I'll feel like, well, now I'm no longer thirsty. Like all this free content's either solve my problem, or I say, oh, well, I'm not even sure why I'm going to buy something when I haven't even gone through all the free content. So that makes perfect sense to me, and that also makes sense how the upsell should be something outside of more content, like you said earlier. Like maybe the upsell could be like some sort of a weight loss membership site where there's some kind of accountability where they check in every day, or maybe like some kind of done for you service or some kind of software. So like if the summit was all about like how to set up websites, and maybe people could talk about like WordPress and landing pages, and the upsell could then be some sort of landing page like provider or service or something like that, as opposed to more training on what they already got. So it makes perfect sense. And so if someone is listening to our conversation today and they like what they've heard about sort of your strategy and your thought process from, not just virtual summits, but also affiliate marketing and book launches, where should people go and what should they check out, and what kind of websites and programs and things like that do you have for people who are listening today?
Yeah, so I think the best place to go is just to my website. So TOMMORKES.com. And there I have a bunch of courses that are free, stuff on, because I work a lot with business owners who are writing a book to like get their name out there or generate new leads and sales for their services or their products. So I have a free course on kind of marketing and launching your book to generate those kind of leads. I have another free course on pay what you want pricing, which is kind of crazy pricing technique that I actually work really well if somebody's interested in going that route. So check that out. And then I have a bunch of free and pay what you want ebooks so people could choose the price. So just go to TOMMORKES.com and definitely sign up for the newsletter. You'll get a lot of stuff that I just don't put on my blog. So it's a great place to go for cutting edge information on this kind of topic. If you're fascinated by summits and launches and marketing campaigns, it's probably a good place to go.
Awesome. I mean, I agree that tommorkes.com, TOMMORKES.com is the place to go for all that kind of cutting edge stuff, because it sounds like in our conversation today here, Tom, that a lot of what you do is kind of testing things out and being on the cutting edge, and with your clients, not just using some outdated stuff, but using like the most cutting edge stuff, and like you said, like sometimes like flipping the funnel on a summit or trying out different back end offers. So lots of good stuff. So everyone should go to tommorkes.com and claim those freebies. Sign up for the newsletter. Check out his blog. Check out his podcast. Check out his books. Lots of good stuff there, I should say. And thanks so much, Tom, for hopping on the show and letting us know about all of your trials and tribulations and wisdom when it comes to virtual summits and all kinds of like just fun, like out of the box, not usually done super often, not the tired stuff, the cutting edge, up to date marketing stuff. So thanks for that, and thanks for stopping by and sharing all that stuff.
Thank you, Robert. It was a pleasure.
Go right now to robertplank.com/iTunes to subscribe to the show, listen to other episodes, and rate and review the show.